Welcome to Real Talk with Day, the podcast. I'm so glad to have you with me this new week. Real Talk with Day, the podcast is where we talk about real life issues and how to rise above pressure. Societal pressure. How to focus on the things that matter when you're single, especially when you're approaching being a marriageable age and there's so much pressure and all that. Today's episode is kind of different and it's talking about obedience. My name, yes, I haven't forgotten. My name is Adedamola Emmanuel, a certified marriage counselor. Today I want to talk about something very different and it's totally about God and your obedience. Yes. Can you be obedient to allow God to lead you? Honestly, that's the question I have for you today. That's something you really need to think about. Can you really trust God? We've been talking over the few weeks about how not to, fall for pressure, how you navigate being single, how being single is not a prerequisite for your happiness. We've been talking about the presence or the absence of a spouse, right? That's not what makes you whole, right? And I was just saying that you need to be whole because there's a permanent void in every individual which God can fill. Now, speaking on that, then it now brings me to this today, just to ask you that when I mean God can fill that void, can you now be obedient to that same God and allow him to lead you in this particular situation where we talk about being single, where we talk about being single and where we talk about the pressure that comes with being single and where we talk about how human, I don't know why, human just try to come into your own life and feel that your own life is not perfect. Meanwhile, theirs still is not perfect. Everybody is moving towards perfection, okay? But they tend to forget about themselves and then they put your own forward, especially when you're single or you're matured and then you're supposed to get married and they see that you're not yet married. And they are kind of fortunate to have been married. It's just so sad that another lady would be putting another lady under pressure. People will be putting each other under pressure. Guys really don't do those kind of things, except their mom, right? Putting each other under pressure, like, okay, how far, guy, and stuff like that. But in all of that, you need to understand that there's a God factor. And that's what I want to stress today. Can you be obedient to allow God to lead you? Can you trust God enough by being obedient? Can you trust God enough by being obedient? Can you trust God enough by being obedient to allow him lead you in total surrender to his will? Geographical, physical, financial status of the person notwithstanding. Stop trying to find a life partner all by yourself. You're doing some combination. I say this all the time, that you cannot do combination and permutation like we were taught in further maths class. You can't do it when it comes to a full package. The best package. Trust me, God always has the best package. My point is, if God is saying to you, I have chosen this person for you. Some of us right now, we're not married because we're not, it's not like we're not sensitive, but it's just that we're just like, no, God, about why? No, this guy, no chest, no, now, he's not this, he's not that, where's the finance and stuff like that. And because of that, you're thinking, no, God, it can't be you. It's not possible. When I mean finance, I'm not saying the person is not working. Don't get me wrong. Please don't get me wrong. I'm not saying the person is not at least in a particular place that, he can actually, do stuff for the home and stuff like that. I'm not saying jobless. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that this person, at least, he has something. But it might not be as financially stable like you are. And then you think that it's not possible. You see, this God, he's the one that knows the end from the beginning, and so you really cannot understand his ways, but you know that his ways are past finding, right? His ways are always past finding. That's why I'm saying to you that is it possible by any chance you're the one actually stopping yourself from going to the next level? If it's not, there's a different case entirely. But if it is, then why not trust in God? Obedience is your complete ticket to that long-lasting marriage that your heart desire, regardless of where he or she comes from, or the image of an ideal man. We always have an ideal image of a man or a woman in our head. Come off it, please, because we forget sometimes that charm and beauty they fade, not just on women but on men as well. His financial status also is temporal, because you can take God's word to the bank. If God says, go ahead, I'm with you, I'm before you with this person, then why not just trust God? You can be pulled from different directions as to marry, based on other people's feelings. Like I said earlier, when I said people just think that they have the autonomy over your own life, right? So sometimes you can be pulled by different people's opinion, like you okay, how can you be married to this kind of person? Can you come? Please, you may even be blackmailed into staying in a relationship because the person is a son of so person. Like how can you leave this person that has this kind of caliber and all that, and that this person is not right for you, either by the way he talks to you, maybe he talks down on you, either by the way he shouts at people. But because you think he's a son or daughter of Lagbaja, and then you now want to stay in that kind of relationship, what you see in relationship obviously magnifies in marriage. Trust me. You owe it to yourself and God to trust God in total surrender and obedience. Isaiah 26:3. I like to quote scriptures, right? It's all I live for. You will keep in perfect peace all who trust in you, all whose eyes are fixed on you. After Jesus resurrected, he told Peter, he said, put this thing on the right side. He was specific. He was specific about where he told Peter to put the net. And just as Peter put the net, Peter was even still trying to speak English. God, how far now? I've been here all night. Can you come? I've told. Leave those things. If God is your father and he says, go ahead and marry this person, go ahead and marry this guy, forget about people, please. It is all on God, because you can then go back to God and say, Daddy, this is what you said. Based on this, because he said, bring your strong reasons, isn't it? So you would have a case to go to your father and bring a strong reason. You can even stand in gap for your husband. You can stand in gap for your wife. You can stand in gap for the person you want to marry. Only because you have been able to put yourself in that place of obedience, total obedience. Now, the emphasis here is where God said, put your net. So he said, I would, but Peter now said something very interesting. He said, I have done all this, yes, but at thy word, I'll let down the net again. So at God's word, you will trust him again. At God's word, you will obey him again. You will say to him, if you say that this is it, then this is it. That means it's your responsibility to believe that he has your best interest at heart, while differentiating between what your heart or your head is saying. God is not an author of confusion. He always gives his children enough signs to know when there's a red flag. I talked about a red flag in one of my messages. You can go back to listen to it. I'm sorry, I said message. In one of my episodes, right? In one of my episodes, I talked about red flags. You can go back and listen to it. So today, I just want you to understand that you can trust God, honestly. You can trust God concerning this matter that we have been talking about, being single, the pressure and stuff. Just trust God and obey him. If you are in that shoe that you're trying to, make an important and informed decision concerning who to marry, if God is saying go ahead, forget about every other person, even me talking. Forget about me and focus on God. Just obey him, because at the end of the day, Abraham obeyed God and it was counted to him for righteousness, isn't it? He was a father of faith and he stayed with him. And because he obeyed God, we know the story. I really don't need to preach to you. So my question is, are you willing to obey God even if it doesn't make sense? Because most times it might not make sense. It really might not make sense. Obedience is a lonely place, and the joy of an obedient person is eternal. This is where we end today. Remember to subscribe, remember to share, remember to like. And I don't mind you guys sending me questions. There'll be an episode where we'll just talk about questions. So feel free to send in your questions so that we can talk about it. There's some things that are bothering you. Go ahead, let's share it. Let's talk about it. I am here just minding my father's business. This is where we close the curtain today. Thank you for listening and bye for now.